So one of the things we're going to look at with this one, we're going to look at learning to deal with conflict. But we're going to kind of look at how we can extend the principles and the learning that we're doing within the class or within the studio, where we're learning to deal with violent conflict or potential violent conflict. And we're going to talk about principles that we can then use in our personal lives as well. So it means that our training doesn't start and end in the studio, or if we find ourselves in a self-defense situations, because self-defense can, the more we look at it, can be broader than just learning to deal with somebody else in a violent encounter. So I'm going to use Lou, and I'm going to use the way that we work on protecting our personal space and learning to deal with conflict, and we're going to use this as a kind of physical analogy with which to work from, which I think we can constantly do within our training in the martial arts, and that's what makes it really functional, because it can be functional not only in the street, if you want to call it, but also in our personal lives as well, which I think is really important, because the training and the learning is already there. So if we look at one of the most important things that we teach and that we learn to do with regards to our self-protection is it's about protecting our personal space. Now, in a kind of potentially violent encounter, the last thing Lou wants me to do, or she was going to allow me to do, is to get into her personal space, because I can cause her harm. So straight away, the first thing that she's doing it well, is she's creating a boundary, or we might term it a fence in the self-defense world, but she's creating a physical boundary between me and her personal space. She's effectively extending her personal space. If her arms are down, her personal space is starting here. When her arms are up, her personal space is starting here, which doesn't mean I have the right to get right up there. Okay, so once we've got that thing of learning to set a boundary, and with this thing in mind of protecting our personal space, first one's a physical boundary. Next thing, she can set a verbal boundary. So she might tell me to just back off.
Back off!
Which is very nice and clear. I'm under no illusions what you want me to do. So we've got a physical boundary. This is universal language, body language. It means one thing, stop. It means leave me alone. Then she backs it up with a verbal boundary. Okay, that's it. Now, even just having the ability to do that, one, we've got the mechanics of learning the physical side of it, which is going to be easy to do when she's working with me, because she's comfortable with me, she knows I don't want to cause her any harm. But it's important in our training that we learn to develop our emotions, we learn to develop the courage to be able to apply these principles, to be able to tell somebody to back off. It's going to take a certain amount of courage, especially if that person wishes to cause her harm. But what we want to do is to look at really how we can use this training and this learning and extend that into our personal lives. And I think one thing, I was talking to one of my guys on my meditation and mindfulness course, and this really resonated with him. And I think there's a lot of people out there that have the ability physically to fight, two, to set those boundaries. But when it comes into our personal lives, we can really easily let people into our personal space, and that personal space can be in here, it can be in here. So learning how to set boundaries, not only when we're dealing with a violent conflict or a potentially violent conflict, but learning how to set boundaries just within our day-to-day personal lives. One thing is learning how to set them, but it's one thing's for sure, it's going to take a lot of courage sometimes to be able to enforce them. Alright? So this is another reason why within our movements programs we build, when we work on our emotional intelligence, so we can have the courage to apply our self-protection training, but then we can also learn to develop the courage to apply this in our personal lives. So learning to set boundaries is really important, right? But one thing's for sure, it's going to be difficult to tell somebody that you don't know to back off. It's going to be even more difficult to tell maybe somebody that you know, family, friends, somebody that you love, to set those boundaries, right? It's just something to bear in mind. The important thing is, for me, is how we can use even something as simple within our personal protection training, creating a boundary, both physical and verbal, protecting that personal space, and then how we can relate that into our everyday lives as well. That for me is what the function of the martial arts is about. And then, you know, what comes after you've set the boundary, people don't respect it, maybe we have to take some action. So I'll leave it at that.